in America, we could end homelessness. We know how to do it. We've known for a long time. We just need the political will. We need your will. You need to go to invisiblepeople.tv/get involved and write your senators, write your legislators, tell them that, we need more affordable housing.
On the 71st episode of Passion in Progress, we're talking homelessness with the creator of Invisible People, Mark Horvath. Invisible People is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating the public about homelessness through innovative storytelling, news, and advocacy. If you were to Google or YouTube Invisible People, you would probably spot founder Mark Horvath handing out socks to homeless and filming an interview with them uncut to hear their story in a very grasping way. Mark has developed Invisible People to give a face and a voice to homelessness, something he knows all too well since he once himself was among them. Personally, I didn't know much about the homeless sector before this interview, and Mark has a great way of explaining what's going on right now and ways to help those that are homeless in the communities that you yourself live in. If you get value out of this episode or any of the episodes that you've heard from my show, please share out this podcast with a friend via Twitter, text, Instagram stories, whatever that may be. You can tag me at Javier Mercedes X. I love seeing feedback. And speaking of feedback, you can leave me a review on Apple Podcasts that helps this podcast grow inside the Apple Podcasts catalog. And one last thing is I haven't really had sponsors on this show, but today we do have a sponsor, and it's me. Here's the problem that many video editors may face. You have a video, picture, graphic, title, or any asset that you need to move on or off the screen in Premiere Pro in a professional way. And I created a solution to that. My Smooth Object Animation Pack allows you to take those assets and transition them on or off the screen in a smooth, simple, professional way. These presets are movements that I've done for the last 5 years as an editor, and I basically use them every single day. So I hope they help you as much as they have helped me. You can check it out at javiermercedes.com/products. I'll have links to it in the description and show notes for this episode. So without further ado, let's talk about homelessness with founder of Invisible People, Mark Horvath. What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show where we talk to inspiring individuals, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you too are motivated to go out and pursue your passions as well. And on the podcast today, we do know somebody that knows a little thing or two about stories and bringing them to the light for all the masses to see. We have the creator of Invisible People, Mark Horvath. How's it going, man?
Thank you so much for having me. This is truly an honor.
What is your spiel? What do you do on a day-to-day basis for Invisible People?
Well, I love the title of your show because it's passion that drives me. Invisible People is the only education-based nonprofit working to end homelessness in the United States.
Powerful.
We're a little bit unique because we started by empowering homeless people to share their own stories. Why that's important is I believe that our inability, the public's inability to relate to homelessness is our biggest obstacle to ending it. You have all this NIMBY, not in my backyard, people just, fighting any solution to help people. And they're really operating out of their fear. They believe that homeless person is a drunk or a bum or a drug addict when the leading cause of homelessness is the lack of affordable housing. 1.3 million children under the age of 16 years old slept outside last year.
That's horrible.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not drunk and they're not, there's families and people. I mean, homelessness is somebody's father, somebody's mother, somebody's brother, somebody's sister. Mm-hmm. And that's what our work tries to do, humanize homelessness.
The simple technique of what you do on your channel is set up a camera in front of them, no editing. Like right here, we're sitting with 3 cameras, a nice recorder, and all these things, but you're in the trenches and actually meeting these people and giving them a megaphone to tell who they are to people. Yeah. Can you kind of dive into it for people that don't know, if they were to stumble across one of your videos, what would that be like?
Well, first, let me back up a little bit and share how that evolved, because I didn't one day say, hey, let's go and not edit the videos. This is a brilliant idea, right? Yeah. My background is television production. Mm-hmm. For me, a video has to have B-roll. It has to have edits. It has to have a music bed. I want to win an Emmy. Mm-hmm. to win an Emmy, I got to have all that stuff. Well, I was a television executive. I made sure the world got Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Married with Children, blah, blah, blah. Bunch of television shows, syndication. I never met Vanna White. There's this manufacturing part of television. Believe it or not, even though TMZ shows Hollywood as a big party, there are people that actually work.
Oh, I know.
You know, but people just think, Hollywood is this glamorous stuff. So it's a lot of work, a lot of stress, lots of money. I ended up homeless on Hollywood Boulevard. I rebuilt my life back to a 3-bedroom house, cushy marketing job, new car in the garage, and in 2008, the economy crashed. I lost everything again, including my Avid workstation. When my house went into foreclosure, my Avid, which for those of you that don't know, that was the Adobe Premiere. I mean, back when Avid was around, that's what professional use and
it's still around for professional use.
Yeah, but Adobe was kind of like for wedding videographers, which that's professional too, but it wasn't the industry standard for cutting TV. And so I had this workstation. It went away when my house went away, and I had this dinky laptop that couldn't cut video. I had a boss that in his office, he had this coffee table book called Finding Grace, which is black and white photos of homeless people. And I'm looking through it and I thought, gosh, I could do this with video. A couple weeks later, he laid me off and I had the time. No, the reality is I went about 19 months of unemployment, not consecutive, but it was a really dark time. I was crashing back into homelessness again. And I needed purpose. I needed passion. I needed a reason to get up in the morning because I was crashing back into homelessness again. So I went out and I just started interviewing homeless people, but I almost didn't do it because I couldn't edit the video. And one day I said, you know what? This is one of my takeaways is don't look at the problem. Look at the solution, because so often we get focused on the problem. So for a week I was going, I can't edit the video. I'm never going to edit the video. Man, I can't do this. I almost didn't do it. And then one day I said, you know what? Nobody's going to watch this stuff. I'm just going to upload it raw and unedited. And that was the solution. And that was the magic. And it took off. Now I'm guessing here because I've never had the money to do a focus group, but most nonprofits have presented the story of homelessness in an entertainment fashion and very well-produced videos. And those are important. I mean, I freelance. I will make one of those for you. There's still a place for that,
Yeah.
But what I've learned is authenticity has replaced production value. When it comes to homelessness, so many people have somebody close to them that has a drug addiction problem or a mental health problem, and they didn't get better overnight. So when a nonprofit plays this entertainment style video saying, ta-da, look, we solved this crisis, they're like, no, it's not really like that. And then when my stuff comes out, they kind of just really started sharing it and engaging with it to the point that, oh my gosh, YouTube gave me their homepage for a day, which is one of my biggest regrets because I didn't leverage it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
but there's no way you would have known how to.
No. So this is my biggest mistake. One of my biggest mistakes is I never thought that I could build an audience around homelessness. So for years, 8 years, I had 20,000 subs and I thought that was it. That was it. And then one day I typed homeless into YouTube and my videos weren't there. And I went like, I got 600-700 videos. What's wrong here? And what was there is all these homeless experiment, social experiment, fake videos that I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, kids are being educated by these? Because then when they type in homeless, that's what's coming up. So then I started doing a deep dive, and that's when I, found, Roberto and Daryl and started learning and started making changes. And today we're going to hit 310 subs in 2 years.
Yeah.
That growth.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And, as a nonprofit, I sat in those sessions that said, pay attention to titles, pay attention to thumbnails. I was in those sessions and I went, okay, yeah, sure. But it really does matter.
Because you've been in YouTube for a very long time. You go back in your catalog, and I think some of your oldest videos are how to sign up for a Gmail account and how to get into Twitter. Like 8 years old. Can you talk about how you've seen the progression of what you've done when it comes to interviewing people? Has it changed, or do you just follow the same thing? You just want to meet people and tell their story? Yeah.
First, those how to sign up for Gmail. That was something that happened here at South by Southwest. So Gary Vaynerchuk picked me as the cause to partner with at South by Southwest.
Oh, awesome.
at a Pepsi Refresh Challenge.
Okay.
And we raised $50,000. So I built this website and produced cartoons to teach homeless people social media.
That's awesome.
It was a huge failure, but it changed into something. Now I facilitate an online support group for homeless people, but that's what those cartoons are for.
Okay.
YouTube, one of the things that's changed for me is really listening to the community. So every Sunday night I do a live stream. I don't really publicize it. I just talk to the community.
Yeah.
And one thing they wanted was longer videos. They wanted longer interviews. And for me, that's not always possible. So I to really put this in context, I wish I could, because sometimes I see, how you can really monetize YouTube by paying attention to keywords, paying attention to trends, and then producing something. Well, my stuff is more organic. I'm under a bridge interviewing a homeless person, and I might only get 2 or 3 minutes, and it might not be safe. Police might be coming, so I don't have a whole lot of control over it. It's just kind of evolved to this. I try now to go longer, which is really for the nonprofit sector. As a producer, I produced for a client a bunch of videos, and one was 3 minutes and 26 seconds, and they want it cut down to 3 minutes. And yes, if you have a platform like Twitter that only allows 2 minutes, you have to be very time sensitive. But they had this belief that every video had to be below 3 minutes. Well, I think they produce for the spike. You see that spike at the beginning of your analytics, but that's not your audience. Produce for your audience, not the spike.
Oh, that's a golden nugget of a quote right there.
Yeah.
I want to go backtrack to your community. And I believe the admins for that community are some of the people that you've met out in the field and interviewed, correct?
Yeah. So when we do a live chat on YouTube, the admins in the chat room are homeless people.
And I want to get to the idea of, how are they on the internet? Do they have cell phones? Are they in the library on a computer? What does that look like?
To answer your question directly, almost 100% of homeless people are on Facebook. Homeless people have the hardware. Having a phone is pretty easy these days. The issue is bandwidth. So when you do the Boost Mobile or the Cricket, if you read the fine print, there's only like a real small amount of bandwidth. So after a day or two, they can't connect to the internet. If you go to a library, you usually have about 45 minutes, sign up, and then you're out. My favorite story is James. James was video blogging out of the Apple Store in Manhattan. The Apple Store is 24 hours. So if you went to the library, they would after 45 minutes, kick him out. But if he could blend in, he could stay in the Apple store all day long.
Really?
So he was homeless in Central Park. And he would go to the Apple store and he found my stuff and video blogged about it. So my Google alerts go off. I see this guy video blogging from the Apple store. I'm like, I've got to go meet him.
Yeah.
So I go down to the Apple store. And one of the things I do whenever I meet a homeless person like that is I say, hey, where do you want to go eat? And he picked a restaurant. We went to eat. And I'm like thinking, gosh, how liberating it is that he can get on the internet and escape the world in a way, or reach the world. Because how else do you find support, get a job, find resources, find healthcare? I mean, you got to touch the internet somehow to better your life. But then I thought, gosh, how horrible it is. He's tethered to the Apple store. So I did a quick fundraiser, crowdfunding right there off Twitter. A bunch of people gave. The true homelessness is absence of choice. So we went up to Best Buy and he picked out a tablet. Let him pick out whatever tablet he wanted. And it was amazing. And now he had the freedom of connecting to the internet wherever there was Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That's so powerful. What'd you say true homelessness is what?
Homelessness is absence of choice.
There was one quote, and I actually wrote it down. One of your most popular videos, you were interviewing, I think like an 18-year-old at the time, and I think he's been homeless since he was 11 or something like that. Yeah. And he said, on the streets, you don't wish for things. You just wait for things to happen because you can't control anything. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, you did. It's so a lot of people say somebody wants to be homeless. Nobody wants to be homeless. I mean, there's this thing called indoor plumbing. It's really amazing. Toilets are awesome. Showers, privacy, awesome. Nobody wants to be without them. There is a small group of people that aren't homeless. They're nomadic. They want to live off the grid. Maybe they're doing the van life thing. It's a choice. They could go to an ATM and withdraw money and get into a hotel, or they could get into rent an apartment anytime they wanted to. Make that choice. Somebody that's living in their van that's mobile homeless is doing so because that's all they have. They don't have a choice. And when you're in a homeless shelter, I mean, you're standing in line for everything. You're kicked out in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, so I say it like this, because a lot of people say, why doesn't that person want to go into a shelter? I mean, if you could be Michelle Obama, Navy SEAL, or Mike Pence, or whoever, and you're not going to want to stay in a shelter. No homeless person ever said, please put me in a room with 100 other homeless people, put me on cots, and then have me stand in line for everything. There's 2 bathroom stalls, and then kick me out in the morning, every morning, even in cold weather. And that's going to cure my mental illness or drug addiction. No homeless person ever said that, but that's what we do. When I present on homelessness, I put up a couple of slides of pictures that were drawn in the 1800s of homeless shelters. And basically they were warehousing people, and when I counter that with a picture that I took of the Glendale Winter Shelter, which is in color and an actual photograph, and they're almost identical. In 100 years, we're still warehousing people.
When you do go to a shelter, your possessions and things like that, I think when you took somebody to eat, you had to eat with the window, with their cart in a window, because you had to make sure that you could see their possessions so nobody stole them.
Right.
And that's one of the things that comes up a lot in your interviews is their people's possessions always getting stolen. And I think in one of the interviews or whatever it was, you talked about how you can't take your possessions, or you can only take a limited amount of your possessions into a shelter.
Yeah, you're allowed 2 bags. And so that's all you're allowed. So if you leave the rest outside, it's gone. What's ironic is then they make that you take them with you. Last thing you want at a job interview is for the employer to know that you're homeless and you're coming in with these bags that scream homeless person. It's ridiculous.
When people say to a homeless person, why don't you get a job? What are the hindrances there?
Well, first off, you have to have a job available. And I don't know anybody that is hiring homeless people, period, much less hiring homeless people that's providing enough income to actually pay for an apartment.
It's interesting because I've watched a lot of your stuff now, so I want to keep cutting you off and provide examples. But
sure, that's fine.
So for this one, there's the guy, I believe in Oakland or Sacramento, where he was talking about a UPS driver was living in the community, and he was living in a homeless community, but still had a UPS job.
Well, you're looking at cities like San Francisco or Los Angeles where your minimum wage worker cannot live in the city. Mm-hmm. So they have to travel, and that travel is expensive. So now they're going to work where they live, wherever that is, if they can. Mm-hmm. So I know my lens is the nonprofit world. I know nonprofits that are having huge trouble keeping staff because they can't afford to live anyplace. And I know homeless people. I mean, a tent on the sidewalk is now affordable housing in most communities.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the affordable rents have gone up 75% in the last 5 years. And everybody automatically assumes, that's an LA, Seattle issue. Phoenix is the one that's the worst hit. I live in a small town of 40,000 people. It's a tiny little town, and the college is driving up rental costs because the students can afford a one bedroom at $1,200 in a town that's 40,000 people that only has Taco Bell jobs. So the landlords are just raising the rent. It's going crazy. The other issue is that housing is now an investment in a commodity. So in Los Angeles, there's 200,000 apartments that are vacant.
That's crazy.
That are rented.
Yeah.
They're rented. People are coming in and renting these apartments knowing that the price is going to go up. And it's an investment. And that is creating this housing shortage and housing skyrocketing. On the jobs thing, we have automation coming. In 5 years, 10 years, I mean, self-driving trucks are already here. Mm-hmm. 4 million truckers will be out of work. You have 7 million data entry clerks that will be out of work. And everybody thinks their job is not going to be affected. That's why we don't worry about it. Well, I use Adobe Spark now instead of going to hire a graphic artist. I suck at graphics, right? But I can put it into Adobe Spark, and it already does this color matching and color scheme for me stuff. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't need to hire a graphic artist. I can do this flyer myself. Automation is going to touch every single job.
Is it a perception thing then? Because I believe you started with nobody wants to hire a homeless person, which if I was in an employer's position against two different people, one with a person with a home and one that's homeless, I'd probably
that's part of it.
Weigh in on the person that had a home.
Ageism is a big issue. Mm-hmm. Right now, they call it the silver tsunami. I'm 58 years old. I lost everything in the 2008 crash. I have no assets. Mm-hmm. And chances of me being homeless again are very real. So you have boomers hitting 65, 10,000 people a day. Right now in Los Angeles, 1.3 million seniors. It's reported that that's going to double in 5 years. And many of them are like me and have lost everything. So if I'm an employer and, especially like for me in marketing, I'm 58. Mm-hmm. I'm too old. Nobody wants to hire a 58-year-old. Yeah. Now, I have a strong social media presence and everything that compensates for that. But it's still hard for me because I'm 58 to get a job. Mm-hmm. So now imagine whether it's a McDonald's job or a warehouse job, and you have a 58-year-old or a 38-year-old. They're going to go for the younger dude. Mm-hmm. Also, there is a extreme African Americans, people of color are overly represented in homelessness. Mm-hmm. And they're also discriminated against in hiring. I mean, that's just real. And that's another issue. But let's say I get a job. Where am I going to shower? How am I going to get to work? I mean, hygiene at work is pretty important. You're going to be around your coworkers and not shower. How am I going to save up for first and last month's rent? So one of the things you're looking at probably some of my comments on the YouTube channel. And one of the things people always say is, well, move. You should move. You should move. And what's ironic is I'll do a video of somebody in California and they say, oh, California, it's too expensive. Move. And then I do a video in North Carolina and they say, oh, North Carolina, it's too expensive. Move. Right? There's no perfect place. Rents are going up everywhere. Where there is lower rent, there's less job opportunities. And, this whole thing of move, well, first, let's say if I could get bus fare, then I get to this new location, I'm still homeless. I've got to find work and then save up for last month's rent and security. Most people that are homeless probably have an eviction. That's probably how they ended up homeless. So it's extremely hard to rent an apartment. When you're homeless, homelessness is expensive. You cannot put your bologna in the refrigerator to save money and make sandwiches. You eat all out all the time. And it's just ridiculous, this get a job. But it's based on, it's individualism. We live in a country that, it's the American dream. The American dream is you can bootstrap your life from nothing to something. Well, you got to have boots to bootstrap. And yes, people are down and out. We've got to help them so they can get back to some kind of self-sufficiency. What we do as people, the general public, is we like to blame the homeless person. It's their fault. They're lazy. They should just get a job.
I feel like especially after watching a lot of your material, homelessness is you have to be on top. You have to hustle in order to get it.
There's no days off. There's no vacation days. There's no, you can't call in sick. Yeah. I was just in Miami, which was great. I was teaching lawyers from around the world, civil rights lawyers, better communication skills. It was wonderful. But one of the co-presenters was a gentleman who was also formerly homeless, and he was homeless in Miami. And we were talking about this, and he said because of the heat, he couldn't move for 4 days. He had nothing to eat, no water, and he was on the side. He wasn't lazy. He was dying, you know, and that's a big thing. Let me ask you, how did our videos change you?
For one, it's informational. So even the subject that we're talking about right now, from you talking to people, the idea of people out there are not all drug addicts or people that use alcohol to get by. The other thing too is your question that you ask at the very end, which is so heartwarming, and you get such different answers. If you had 3 wishes, what would they be? One of their wishes, and you have a lot of videos, and I would say most of the time, one of their wishes is for a betterment of someone else or to help other people, which is, it hits you in the heartstrings. Yeah. The one lady that you helped underneath the bridge,
Amanda. I have 24 years sober, and I can't remember where I parked my car.
But you remember all
I remember each and every Invisible People video.
If you listen to a lot of motivational self-development material, it's all about your mindset and everything. And with her, she's so much practicing it of, I am here and I'm going to look for the good in everything. And then she completely flips it and says, well, I'm still here and I'm living underneath a bridge and I want to wash my hair, but I can't wash my hair because it's freezing cold outside. And I know this isn't a very big thing for you, but it would mean the world to me if I could wash my hair. That whole thing.
So I don't know if you saw what I did with Haynes.
I know you did something with her. Do you want to explain?
Well, sure. What we did was
can you explain how you found her, or just the story behind that?
Sure. Haynes, I've been partnering with Haynes for a while, and it's just one of the things that we do. Now, people say, like, I partner with Ford. I I've partnered with a lot of different brands. It's part of my strategy. It's not like, when in the YouTube space, we think about brand deals, right?
Yeah.
I'm after their network. So my iPhone sunk to the Ford Motor Company website for 2 years. When I took a photo or all of my videos was on the Ford Motor Company website.
Wow.
Ford never gave me a penny. Never. They lent me a car. I paid for the gas. I paid for the oil changes. But I want their network. So one of the things we do, and I'm sure for-profits do it too, is we're speaking in an echo chamber. So I use brands to reach their network.
Yeah.
Because my goal is to educate the general public. Most of the people in the homeless services sector already like homeless people. That's not my audience. My audience is you who may never have had a connection to homelessness. And how I do that is by working with brands. So Hanes came to me with an idea. Let's ship 3 smartphones to 3 homeless people and record a day in their life on Instagram stories. And you have 30 days to make it happen. And I said, it's not going to happen. You can't do this. Find 3 homeless people that, are going to be social media enough friendly, media friendly. I said, this is impossible, but I went and I made it happen. I do that a lot. No, this is impossible, but let's jump through the hoop. I love the challenge. And it was a really powerful campaign because it reached 10 million kids. Hanes amplified it through their marketing channels. And it had Manda washing her hair in the cold. And that's how I first met Manda. I don't know if you saw the video where we're actually under the bridge and she shows me how she lives. Explains all this, but because Hanes actually went, the corporate Hanes went with me under the bridge to meet Manda.
Wow.
And Manda got off the streets because of that phone.
That's awesome.
So she did the work. I want to, back to what you were saying about internet.
Cell phones.
Yeah. She did the work. All I did was buy her a phone with a year worth of coverage. And she was the one who was able to call mental health in the different places to get her off the street. But she'll tell you, it was that phone that got her off.
Amazing story, by the way. I don't want to just graze.
Oh,
no. But the other big thing that blindsided me, and I did not know this, and I feel, I don't want to say stupid, but I just didn't know that there were motels out there where the rent is so cheap daily that another form of homelessness is just living in these places in perpetuity or however long they can live there. And I think there was a lady that you interviewed that had 4 kids in her place, and she was working at a McDonald's.
Jean.
And if she missed one day, then it's, where's the rent going to come from? And I can't imagine the amount of stress day to day of, 1, being able to take care of yourself, but 2, I mean, my kids, I have 2 kids and they get sick all the time, especially when they're building their immune system. I can't imagine. What do you do? I don't know what you do.
Well, how do you give a kid a timeout?
Yeah.
You're all in the same room.
Yeah.
The stress on the relationship with the, parents, much less siblings. You're all sleeping on 1 or 2 beds or the floor. Most of those hotels, the weekly rate hotels, are filled with drug dealers and sex workers. It's not a place for kids, but it becomes a trap because once you're in there, you have to keep paying and you can't afford first and last to get another place. Can I talk real quick about the 3 wishes?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So, as a television producer, this is how it started. If you look at the early videos, I didn't ask a lot. Now I'm actually not going to ask a lot because a couple of people have broken down and the community said, you probably shouldn't ask that all the time. So now I'm going to be a little more conscious. But I was speaking at the University of Arkansas in an outdoor amphitheater, and it was a powerful event. They had billed it as homeless advocate coming to speak. So there's a bunch of homeless people there. And when we went into the question and answer, they started asking questions out of their pain. I understood that. They're frustrated. They're homeless. The city isn't doing anything. So I had a choice. I could have either called security or called them down and interview them live. And I interviewed them live, just like I would on YouTube. And the mayor happened to be in the audience. There was a farmer that donated 40 acres of land to the community because of that. That's now being used to feed people. Or homeless youth work on the farm. And the mayor went and started a housing program.
That's awesome.
Because of that. But what was neat was as a television producer, probably my best skill was interviewing. And if an interview went flat, I would, try to just change the conversation a little bit. And I'd ask, what are your 3 wishes? Right? And more often than not, the person would respond and they'd get back on track. So it's just one of the tools I would use when interviewing people. And I did it occasionally. So at the end of this speaking event, I give the mic to the person holding the event and he says, hold on. And there's about 500 people in the amphitheater. They all turned with white cards of their 3 wishes.
Oh, wow. That's
as
awesome.
a gift to me. They had all filled them out and it was so powerful. And I realized how powerful the 3 wishes are. So then I started, it's basically branded. And I think it humanizes it because we need to be very real about the social crises in this world, but we have to do it with some bit of hope. And I think at the end, when the 3 wishes, people start talking about, oh, I want to help somebody else. I think it brings it home. It really humanizes it. The ones that get to me really are the people that can't come up with one.
Mm-hmm.
That they are so far down in the spirit that they've lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gets to me.
You mentioned hope, and I think that was one of the other quotes that I wanted to bring up. I think it's in one of your most recent videos. I want to read it so I don't get it.
Yeah.
People want to hope, but they don't know what to hope for.
Oh my gosh, who said that?
I think it was in Oakland. It was one of the ladies that you interviewed there.
Wow.
Another big thing that I see throughout all of your interviews is they talk about religion in some way, shape, or form. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, especially since you yourself, I believe, you relate to it with them?
Yeah, I have a different. So my progression out of homelessness, because it was a church that helped me out.
Okay.
And there was no path out except ministry.
I gotcha.
So I lived in a church for 7 years. Nobody should live in a church for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
But, I would say, when do I get my life back? When do I get a car? When do I get a new wife? They're like, Jesus never stops discipling you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so my only path out was Christian television because I had worked in television. And I had no clue on it. I was on Monster.com. Monster.com is a dangerous thing. I don't even know if it's around anymore, but it used to, right now it's Indeed or something, right? Yeah. Monster.com. So I was looking on Monster.com. I saw this thing, senior producer, got the job. I went from homelessness to $70,000 a year, back up to $100K a year. Shoop. And I'm in this, I call it the dark side. It really taught me response television. So what I did was infomercials. The late night kids flies on your face? Mm-hmm. That was me.
That's hilarious.
I didn't do those, but I just to explain the late night infomercials, raise money, give money. And I knew all the triggers. And it helped shape Invisible People, both good and bad, because now I'm really conscious about gimmicks and fundraising. I've raised about $20 million for nonprofits over the last bunch of years. And to me, it has to have integrity because Christian television taught me the wrong thing. And without going into the Christian TV thing, I have a strong faith, but I don't believe in words. I believe in action. You should show God's love. Mm-hmm. Don't just talk about it. So most homeless people have to sit through preaching just to get a meal.
So do you think that's where a lot of it comes from?
I think that's where a lot of it comes from, but it also comes from, in most cities, there's only a gospel rescue mission, especially in rural cities. Mm-hmm. And these gospel rescue missions have evolved out of an old model of 3 hots and a cot and a Bible. And, that might have worked in the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, maybe even the 1980s. It is so outdated now. And they need to change. If they change, they could end homelessness. We could end homelessness tomorrow. We could. That's the big thing about homelessness is we know how to end it. We can end it tomorrow. So the gospel rescue missions, that's their way of getting you into this Bible study. So they kind of do this thing where they're coerce people through
almost
needs.
Brainwashing, but not really.
Yeah, and it's disgusting to me.
Okay.
It really is. It really is because, if Jesus is all that, why do you have to use a gimmick? Mm-hmm. And it's just evolved. People have been programmed. It's religious programming. They have been programmed. I mean, you go out in the streets and see somebody with a bullhorn, or you see the Jehovah's Witnesses with the books standing out there. That's religious programming. So I want to be the cool Christian. And sometimes I don't even like calling myself a Christian. And because, God.
I'm glad I brought it up though, because it's a through line throughout a lot of your interviews. But now I know some of where that comes from is because a lot of the people that they're interacting with are on the back end.
Well, and you got to understand when you are down and out, and I mean extremely down and out. You do not know where you're going to sleep at night. You don't know where your next meal is going to come. You have to have faith in something, or you're just going to shrivel up and die. So I think it's a combination of both. I think homeless people at some point have had to go through ministry. There's this false belief that a sandwich can end homelessness, right?
Yeah.
So charity is important. People are hungry. People need clothes. And it's okay to feel good. Giving is good. There's nothing wrong with giving. But if you're feeding somebody in a park, you got to do something to get them out of the park. And a sandwich is not going to end homelessness. We need to get them housing. I mean, lots of pastors hate me because they'll say, we go down to the park and they just need a buddy. And I said, well, if you're their buddy, you'd get them into housing. Mm-hmm. Because if they're your friend, you would get them into housing. You just don't give people sandwiches. But there's this army of compassion that is going out every day. In Skid Row, Los Angeles, there's 50 churches every day coming down to feed the lost, laying hands on people, Holy Ghost stuff, right? And if we could get them, there's actually overfeeding, and people aren't going hungry in any inner city. Mm-hmm. There is food insecurity in this country. It just doesn't happen to be in the homeless population. We need to educate that army of compassion and move them to thinking more about ending homelessness than maintaining homelessness.
You're bringing up housing. What does that look like? What is what is a good strategy in 2019 to end homelessness?
Sure. So I have a video, invisiblepeople.tv/housing first. Invisiblepeople.tv/housing first. It's part of the documentary they did. It's a webisode piece. It's 4 minutes long. It documents housing first. And it has a veteran who was drinking himself to death. Lanny was blowing a .48. His wife had died and he was killing himself with alcohol. Lanny, I just adopted Lanny, and I would go to the hospital when he was in the hospital. He was probably costing taxpayers millions of dollars. Malcolm Gladwell wrote
Love his stuff.
Yeah, so he wrote a short called for New Yorker magazine called $1 Million Murray that documents how the city of St. Louis paid $1 million for Murray to be out on the streets. So when you see that person with the sign or the cup, if you're not giving to them, that's okay, because you're paying taxes for them to be out there. The most expensive expensive solution to homelessness is criminalization. And sadly, criminalization is growing. I mean, I don't know the cost here in Texas, but in New York, a year in jail is $169,000.
That's crazy.
Right. How much is an apartment?
Not that much.
Right. Exactly. But so Lanny was dying, drinking himself to death. Took me 4 years to get him into housing. Got him into housing, immediately got sober. So the old thinking, the rescue mission thinking, was that you have to be deserving for housing. You have to be housing ready. So if you're going to the bathroom behind a dumpster in a McDonald's parking lot, how the heck do you get sober? Right? Life sucks. Might as well have a beer, right? So housing first, then work on addiction and mental health problems. Instead of out on the streets, things, you're not going to get better. So we need to get people not warehoused in the shelters. Shelters still have a place, where it's a staging from the streets to shelters into housing. The problem right now is there's no housing. So it roadblocks it all. Now, we really could. We know how to end homelessness. Every state, every community is a little different because politics and resources are a little different. But in America, we could end homelessness. We know how to do it. We've known for a long time. We just need the political will. We need your will. You need to go to invisiblepeople.tv/get involved and write your senators, write your legislators, tell them that we need more affordable housing.
And I believe one of the counter arguments would be for people that are just scraping by to even afford their own apartments and other places like that. If there was an affordable housing unit, what would that be in New York City? What would the cost of that be for somebody that to get?
So I'm not smart enough to give you those numbers.
Okay. But I don't want to misquote you.
But I would. You bring up a good point where we really have to start at prevention. We need to stop, especially families, from entering into homelessness. There's something called rapid rehousing now, where if a family is going into homelessness or an individual that can restabilize, meaning they're hireable. Oh, that's another one on the hireable. So rapid rehousing pays their rent for a year or two while they find another job, retrain or whatever. We first have to prevent homelessness. Mm-hmm. Then if somebody enters into homelessness, one of two things. If there's somebody that is hireable and can get out of homelessness, then, workforce development. If there's somebody with mental illness and addiction or can't be hired, and then you get them into permanent supportive housing. And I wish I'd thought this earlier because this goes with the job thing. Yeah. So there's a video of Muhammad. There's actually two videos of Muhammad. Sadly, I get to repeat people because they're still in that same area the next year when I visit. So Muhammad is missing an arm. He has the name Muhammad. He's African-American, and he did 6 years in jail. So he's panhandling.
Yeah.
That's the only way he survives. The state of Illinois does not provide welfare because they say he can work. And who's going to hire a black man with a felony named Muhammad with one arm?
That was in jail for 6
years. He's not hireable.
Yeah.
So, he has this choice of either committing a crime to survive, possibly going back to jail, or panhandling.
It's such a diverse subject. And it's interesting to me because you brought up both spectrums, because I feel like there's the people that are sober, just like what you point out in your videos, or not you, but the actual people themselves point out that, hey, I've been sober for this long, or even some people that don't even do drugs or alcohol, and they just fell on some really bad luck, and they're out there, and you're putting kind of turning the face to the idea that all of these people are they're quote unquote lazy and they're just out there because they want to be. It's very heart-wrenching, a lot of the stories in and of themselves.
Believe it or not, almost everything of Invisible People, I've ran by a boss at one time or another, or a client, and they wouldn't do it.
Really?
And yeah.
Well, one of the quick questions I want to ask is, if somebody is, like here in Austin, Texas, it's okay for homeless people to come up to the cars and everything like that. If you have somebody approach you like that, besides money, what is something that somebody should give to somebody like that?
Good question. So first off, I always say be safe. I actually have a video on how to give out socks. If you don't feel safe, if you're walking down the street and you don't feel safe, don't engage.
Yeah.
And there are aggressive panhandlers, and I apologize for that. Got to understand that when people are desperate or mental illness or intoxicated, I don't want to give an excuse, but sometimes people are aggressive. Look at the White House. I always got to put it in. I got to put it in perspective. And I don't mean to get political on you, but the people will say, well, they're dishonest. They ripped me off. Enron, Bernie Madoff. Rich white people have ripped off far more people than homeless people ever will. Mm-hmm. But first, you have to be safe. If you want to give to a homeless person and you don't feel safe, don't get engaged. Second, listen. There's a great story of some people in Koreatown in Los Angeles that talk about the guy just needed eye drops. There's nothing wrong with giving money. I'm probably the worst person to panhandle because I normally have a bag of socks.
Yeah.
I give socks. Now, underwear is gold. But people come in different sizes.
Yeah.
It's logistically impossible to keep all those sizes in a backpack.
Mm-hmm.
But socks are universal. Keep socks in your briefcase, your backpack. Somebody approaches you, give them some socks. The response to socks, I still laugh. I've been doing this for 11 years. Hey, would you like some socks? And, the way they respond just makes me smile. It's wonderful. But if you feel like handing somebody some money, that's fine too. You got to understand there's things that only money can buy. Diapers, tampons, certain, medicine if you're got a cold like I do. Mm-hmm. I have a homeless friend. I have an article on Invisible People about giving money to homeless people is okay. And I had a homeless friend and he needed a toothbrush and he's standing in front of a drugstore and he has a sign, I need a toothbrush. And people are putting Happy Meals at his feet. So even though he's already got a number 3 from Burger King and a number 2 from McDonald's, people are still giving him hamburgers. He needs a toothbrush. Right?
Yeah.
But we're programmed, they just need a meal. They just need a meal. Mm-hmm. So, if you feel like giving a couple bucks, there's nothing wrong with it. Then what if they go and do drugs? The people that gave me money when I was homeless on Hollywood Boulevard, that I went and used drugs, saved my life. Because if I got dope sick, then I'm vulnerable. And if I'm vulnerable outside, I'm going to get mugged. So, even the Pope says, just give.
Mm-hmm. Personally, if I were you, just doing what you do on a day-to-day basis would get to me. Physically meeting so many people, and it's not just here in the United States. You're everywhere, talking to these people and seeing their stories day to day. I'm sure it has to get overbearing at times.
Well, I'm 24 years sober, but that Domino's 6-cheese double bacon pizza they made for me.
You have a couple of videos and I'm sure other social things that you posted from this guy named Derek in Oakland, where he has a government sanctioned what would it be called? A homeless community? What is it?
I like community. I think that's a better word than encampment.
Is that really what it's called?
Yeah.
Sounds like World War II stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you see them a lot in Seattle, where there's city-sanctioned tent cities. They're in Portland. There's some other places where, first off, tent communities shouldn't exist. They're a slap in the face of homeless services. But since there's not enough shelter beds and there's not enough housing, it's something. And the tent communities, like in Seattle, Tent City 3, Tent City 5, they actually screen people. They screen for sex offenders because they have kids there. They allow pets, which shelters don't. They allow couples to be together. Most shelters don't. So Tent City model is something to look at. The tents are there. Well, what's the issue? Trash. People say, oh, look at all, they're all that trash. They don't have trash pickup. You know, humans guarantee make trash. We're really good at making trash. It has to go someplace. If you do not have a vehicle or if you do not have trash pickup, it grows. So let's provide trash pickup and let's provide some porta potties. It's pretty common sense, but communities would rather arrest people than help provide some kind of...
They're looking to be self-sufficient in those communities too.
Yes. But again, it's a Band-Aid. It's not a solution. The interesting thing was YouTube selected Invisible People to be a part of the VR Creator Lab. Mm-hmm. So we're also doing a movie with Oculus that's debuting at Sundance, which I'm so excited. It's with film director Rose Trochet. It's amazing. Without going into too much spoiler, it is about a homeless woman who plays herself in the film, and all the actors are homeless people, which is record-breaking in itself. But it is a true VR experience where you interact with objects.
Wow.
It's amazing. So VR Creator Lab is VR 180. So they came in, provided some funding, 3-day boot camp, and you go and create VR content, VR 180 content. And I was new to VR 180. I'd been doing some 360 stuff, but I was new to the VR 180. And in a headset, it's 3D. It's really cool. And what I really like about VR is ambisonic audio. So even in the VR 180, you still have a sphere of audio to play with.
That's awesome.
So like if you look at the Tent City video, or the one where Eric is panhandling, you're going to hear those noises all over. And if you turn your head, it's like different than stereo, you know, it really is, you're interacting with the environment, and audio plays such a big role in the experience. I'm grateful to YouTube for selecting us. We weren't the technically best out of the lab, but I got some feedback last week. We had the best stories. So I would rather, you know, and that's one thing that bugs me. So, because, you know, we live in a world now where there's just wonderful, amazing YouTube creators, and they're mind blowing. And here I am with my unedited videos that often I make a mistake because I'm under a bridge, or I'm in this environment. I'm worried about safety. I'm worried about all these other things. I'm worried about the homeless person's safety. And so it used to really get to me that my videos weren't perfect, but nobody complained that the focus is soft. Nobody complained that all of a sudden in the middle, the colors change, right?
Yeah.
So now I play with it a little bit. I remember being in one of those tent cities in Seattle, and a dog hits the monopod. Now, because I can't edit it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's now the DNA. Interesting enough about not editing it out. When we did the homepage for, when YouTube gave me their homepage for a day, they had me record a video to the YouTube community. And that took 72 takes because back then,
to get it right.
Right. Well, no, the DNA is we didn't edit any video. Right.
Yeah.
So for me to go through, I was in an alley in Nashville. And when I would, you know the deal, being a self-producer, editor, talent, right? You hit record, truck goes by. Hit record, somebody comes out to do a smoke. Hit record, horn honks. Hit record, airplane. Hit record, you mess up your lines. So you keep on doing it till you get right. Interesting enough, people were complaining they thought it was fake. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's unedited. It's real as it could be. It's not fake, but
What I find, I guess, funny or interesting is when you're interviewing somebody and they know to be quiet when a siren's going by, and they say they're courteous and say something like, "Oh, I'll just wait until this fire hydrant or the fire engine goes by," and you say, "Thank you. Okay, you can continue."
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first person unedited, I've kind of pioneered that in a way, at least in the nonprofit context. And I never planned on it to be as powerful or even an art form as it is. If you go at the beginning, like I said, it came out of this photo book, the whole idea. So at its core, Invisible People is really an art project. And, there's, I think I'm at 970 videos. Jeez. And so 800 of them are at least first person interviews of 300 cities. And
is that videos that you have published right now? Because you've taken some of them down, I'm assuming.
No. So the homeless people, well, yes, I've only deleted 3 videos.
But it's for good reasons.
I make everybody a promise. And people ask about this. How do you get permission? How do you get first it's a respect thing. For me, the relationship is most important. And what I mean by that is when I ask for a model release, that's really a prenup. It's basically saying, I can screw you, but you have no rights. I can do whatever you want. And I don't want to go into that relationship with a homeless person. Mm-hmm. So each homeless person retains the rights to their image. I give them information on how to contact me. And if they want their video removed or any photos I put on Twitter, I will remove it. It's also unedited. I mean, people say, oh man, you're exploiting the homeless. They retain the rights to it. I don't spin their story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's their stuff. And out of 800 videos, only 3 people have ever contacted me and said, you know what? I don't want to be on YouTube anymore. Yeah. And that's just a respect thing, and it's just, I have put into place, homelessness is challenging. And I have put into place some protocols to make sure nobody gets hurt.
Yeah. What I like to ask everybody at the end of the podcast, first one is why do you do what you do?
I don't believe I have a choice. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, especially in the faith-based community, say they are called. I'm called to this. Well, if you're called, you can hang up the phone.
God, there's so many good nuggets in this.
When you're called, you can hang up the phone. I believe, and one of my road trips, I was driving and it just came over me. This is my destiny. I don't get paid. If I had kids, I wouldn't be able to do this. Mm-hmm. And if you look back at all my experiences from playing music, to ministry, to dealing drugs as a kid, to being a drug addict, to working in television and production, to being a chief marketing officer for a large organization, for all these experiences to now, I've never felt closer to a destiny.
It's a very powerful why. It's awesome. And I think from personally watching your material, I don't know if it's unfortunate or awesome and that's a bad thing to say, I think, in terms of you've gone through what these people that you're interviewing have gone through, so you can relate to them in ways that a lot of other people cannot. Yeah. It's super powerful.
I'm not spooky, and I want to quit every single day. But there's something in the back that says, if not you, who? Yeah. So like Dateline featured me in my work. Yeah. And the executive producer, who comes from 60 Minutes, which is my favorite show. If you want to learn storytelling, watch 60 Minutes. They do it right. Mm-hmm. And he was researching something and he says, your videos keep popping up. What's your story? You have the largest body of homeless stories I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And it's changing people. And from the housing programs have started. The one video, the most recent one, of the couple in that tent encampment, Kimberly and her husband, they got housed because of that video.
It's powerful.
Somebody saw that video that could house them and went and housed them. How can I stop?
When you see firsthand what the power of giving a megaphone to those that may not have it, I'm just going to keep saying the word powerful. Second question is, and I don't know how this would really be phrased, but what I normally ask is, to get to where you're at today, what advice would you tell people? And I think it's in terms of bringing it to the very beginning of the podcast, talking about purpose and passion. What is some advice that you could give to people to live in a way that you are now doing something that you love doing and you're making a positive impact in the world?
I wish that you would give me an advance on that one so I could think of something really catchy.
Yeah.
I think it was Aristotle that said that once you find something that you can do that makes you money and that helps people, that should be your vocation. And for me, like I said, because I don't have a family, I can follow that.
Yeah.
Without money. But I do believe I'm laying the groundwork to actually build it up. It's just telling stories of homeless people is just, even the homeless sector doesn't like it. My advice for people is to really go for the long haul, because Invisible People has been around for 11 years. And I think it's right now that we're really starting. For years, we had 20,000 subs. Today, we're hitting 310,000 subs. That's all happened in the last 2 years. We want this overnight success, but the overnight success is working every day for a long time on your passion. If you have a real job, this is what I tell kids when I'm speaking, is consider yourself a freelancer. Save up that, as a freelancer, we save money so that when we don't have a client, we can fall back and live until we get that next client. Even if you're getting a paycheck and you're getting health insurance, consider yourself a freelancer and save up that money, because every time I've had that guaranteed job that I thought, I'm going to have this job forever, I lose it. I really, and there's no guarantees anymore. Prepare for that, and whatever you're passionate about. I know that. And if you don't have a dream, help somebody else with their dream until you get your own.
Yeah. That's interesting. There's a couple of different people that have, given that piece of advice. If you don't know what you're passionate about, go out and help somebody else, and at least you'll start to find wherever that may be.
Yeah.
Even if it's something completely obscure from what you were helping somebody else out with. There's one more question I want to ask, sure. And it may not deal with any of the Invisible People, but in the last year, what is something that you've done business-wise or personally? What's been one of the best investments that you've made?
I'll go back to your last question in the same thing. Great men are ordinary men that don't quit. So I had been working on a brand refresh and a new Invisible People for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I almost gave up. It was so hard because we don't raise a lot of money. And when you don't have a lot of money and you want to do things with excellence, you just have to work harder. And it was such a struggle. I almost gave up. But we launched last February. Now we have an online portal for young adults to learn about homelessness. It was never there before. If I'm a kid and I want to learn about homelessness, I had to download a 46-page academic PDF or some rescue missions fundraising stuff. I created that. Our videos are still there. That's our DNA. But I started journalism. We now publish original news content on homelessness every single day. It's syndicated on Apple News. Soon will be on Google News.
That's awesome.
And I'm here. I will be at Texas Tribune tomorrow to learn about journalism. Now, I spell neighbor, N-A-B-O-R. I am not the person to be heading journalism, right? But I saw a need, and I saw that invisible people needed to evolve past the stories. And it's all part of an inbound marketing strategy. I want people to read that article, but come in and watch a video. And so the news content is really, and Chris Brogan, who's a friend, calls it the outpost strategy, pro blogger. Darren's also another friend, writes a great post on the outpost strategy, how you use social media to bring into your home base. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, what I've done in the last year was take the risk of launching a brand new Invisible People with a brand new strategy, and it's rocking. Oh my gosh, it is kicking ass.
That's awesome.
And it was a huge risk that kept me up at night. It was impossible to raise money for, but I pushed through and made it happen, and it's better than I ever thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of other creators that are listening to this can definitely relate when it comes to, I myself included. In fact, you're talking about just the act of copywriting and other things of that nature. The guest that was just on was, I had a copywriter on that does copywriting for a lot of big brands, and I wanted to get his perspective of where is copywriting now in today's day and age of the internet. And it's so, as somebody that creates content, I love making videos, but I'm not good at it. The same way at spelling neighbor. Creating copy is so tough for me. For other people, it's like, it's their jam. But I can see firsthand when you do have good copy that it can relate to other people. And then it's another piece of the puzzle and becoming a whole kind of media entity.
Yeah. And hire the right people. So I had a choice of hiring myself, which is a very real need, or reinvesting into Invisible People, taking the risk that it will grow. So I have a managing editor. She manages all the journalism, posts the content, make sure the commas are in the right place. And what is really neat, and I didn't really expect this, is we started hiring homeless writers.
That is amazing.
And, I remember, so at the first of the month, I send everybody money, and several of them are homeless. I sent a woman who lives in a homeless shelter in Atlanta $200 this morning, and totally made my day.
Awesome. That's amazing. Great high note to end the podcast on. If people want to get involved, if they want to actually help out in what is going on with homelessness, where do you want to send people? What should they check out? So
I'm kind of weird in this because a typical nonprofit would pitch themselves. But for you to get involved in homelessness needs to be a local connection. So research in your community who is ending homelessness and not just maintaining it, and support them. Now, everybody has to advocate for more affordable housing. That's a given. We have to do something about more affordable housing. But if you connect to your local community, it's going to be more powerful for you. You're going to stick with it.
And what was the website again for the local housing? Or for
so invisiblepeople.tv/get involved is where you can type in your address and tweet, Facebook, call, email your legislators.
Yeah, you said it twice, but I know when you say something 3 times, that's when it sticks. So there was the 3rd time.
Good.
Yeah, and where are you at on Twitter? Because I know you're
so at Hardly Normal is my daily rants, but at Invisible People, also at Invisible People on Instagram is the nonprofit, and just 100% about homelessness.
Amazing podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
And sorry, my voice is getting out. I coming down with a little bit of a cold, but great men are ordinary men that don't quit.
God, there's so many sound bites I want to soundbite or make little highlights of this interview. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, no. Thank you for having me. And thanks, Jan, for the connection.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, till next time. Hope you guys are out there living a life of abundance. I'll see you guys on the next episode.